When I was 5, my mom told us David was dead, and that was that. He was my sister's dad, not mine. And even before he vanished, he was more of a rumor than an actual person. He'd gone abroad years and years earlier, got into some kind of accident, and nobody heard from him again. No phone calls, no letters, no nothing. Eventually, word would spread that he had died, and everybody just kind of accepted it. I did too. So when I was 9 or 10, home alone one afternoon, I nearly fell over when I opened up the door and see him standing there. The knock itself was even strange. It was slow and just really weird. Not like somebody visiting, more like somebody trying to remember how knocking worked. I looked through the frosted glass and saw a man's silhouette standing very close to the door. Against my better judgment, I opened it. He looked awful. His hair was greasy and overgrown. Stubble covered most of his face. His clothes hung off him, but it was his eyes that really bothered me. They weren't vacant exactly. They were focused somewhere beyond me, as though he was looking through the house instead of at it. "Is your mom in?" he asked. The voice was rough, slow. I recognized immediately from all the old photographs. "David?" I asked, and he blinked. "I brought the house," he said. I have no idea what that meant. His eyes just drifted past me toward the hallway and the staircase. Then he smiled slightly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Is she 12? he asked. My sister's 12th birthday was a week ago, but this cold feeling would wash through me. He leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Don't let the clock talk." Then I ran. My mom worked across the road, and I burst through the door of her workplace almost in tears. "David's at the house." She frowned, looking at me. "What?" "David's at the front door." For a second, she looked annoyed. "No," she said. "David's dead." I shook my head at her. "No, Mom, he's there." Something in my face and demeanor must have convinced her, because she immediately stood up and followed me outside. We hurried across the road together, and there was David, still standing there. He hadn't moved. He was facing the frosted glass of the front door, head tilted as though he was listening to something inside. My mom stopped cold. "David?" He turned around, and the look on his face changed several times in just a few seconds. Recognition, confusion, happiness, and back to nothing. "Mary?" is what he said, but that wasn't my mom's name. She ended up bringing him inside anyway, and looking back now, that's probably not what would have happened today. Somebody would have called an ambulance or social services. Back then, people just kind of dealt with things. David sat at our kitchen table while my mom made tea and tried to figure out what had happened to him. Getting answers from him was seemingly impossible. Sometimes he knew my sister's name, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he just stared at the wall for several minutes without even speaking. The only thing that ever made sense was when he tapped the side of his head and said, "The car went sideways." And that was it. Later, we learned he'd been in a serious car accident abroad and suffered a traumatic brain injury, but nobody knew how severe it was. Nobody knew who had looked after him. Nobody even knew how he'd gotten home. When my sister arrived later that day, he stared at her for a really long time, until she became uncomfortable. "You've gotten big," he said. Then, a few minutes later, he asked who she was. That night, he slept in our sitting room. None of us really slept particularly well, knowing he was under the same roof, and I remember hearing him pacing downstairs long after everybody had gone to bed. Slow footsteps back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The next morning, strange things kept turning up. Our wall clock had disappeared. Random. After searching the house, we found it carefully wrapped in towels and hidden away in a cupboard. Nobody knew why. On our kitchen table sat this brass eagle ornament and a card that read, "Welcome to your new home." It was addressed to my sister. We'd lived in that same house for years now. At the time, none of it made sense, but later we wondered if some damaged part of his mind knew her birthday was approaching and he was trying to do something kind. Maybe he remembered she existed but couldn't remember why. Maybe he knew he needed to be somewhere but couldn't remember where. Whatever was happening inside his head, it was heartbreaking and unsettling at the same time. The next morning, he left. Nobody saw him go. My mom was in the kitchen when she looked outside, and he was already halfway down the road, and he never even looked back. We never saw David again either. More than 20 years have passed now since that single night. I guess a few years ago, my mom ran into David's sister while shopping, and she mentioned his visit to our house, and his sister casually told her that they'd experienced something very similar. Apparently, he'd appeared at their place around the same time, confused and disoriented, then quickly vanished again. And that was the last time anybody's heard from him or of him. I've searched online for him over the years, but there's not really anything there. No trace and no answers. I guess the strangest part to me is that he didn't really feel dangerous. He felt more lost, completely just hopelessly lost, like a man wandering through fragments of memories that no longer connected properly. Looking back, I suspect the news of his accident somehow became distorted through word of mouth until people believed that he actually died. Without identification and unable to explain who he was, he may have slipped through the cracks entirely. I still think about him sometimes, about the knock on the door, the way he stood outside listening to the house, about him asking if my sister was 12, and about the clock. Parts of me know what I experienced that day, and it's still totally surreal. But there's another part of me that can't help but wonder if I didn't open up that door to a ghost that odd afternoon.